Hi, everyone. My name is Vivian Chen. I'm an associate professor in the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. I'm joined today by my co-author, Gabriel Ibasco, a research project officer working with me here in the School of Communication. Today, we would like to present the paper titled The Effect of User Avatar Similarity on Intergroup Perception in Virtual Reality. First, why do we want to study virtual reality to address intergroup outcomes? The emergence of this scholarship is relatively new, and it also argues that the technology would offer us new avenues for simulating social interactions between different groups in a way that allows for both experimental control in the lab and also ecological validity. Growing body of work on perspective taking in virtual reality highlights how immersive experiences in virtual worlds can shape real-world perceptions of our groups, especially in a multicultural, multiracial context. There were a number of studies that have tested perspective taking in virtual reality, but fewer studies have investigated the contact hypothesis in a virtual reality context. The contact hypothesis, originally theorized by Alport, offers a long-standing approach to explain how increased contact and familiarity with representative outgroup members can overcome prejudice in intergroup contexts. In a technological context, studies have showed that vicariously experiencing contact through media representations can lead to decreases in outgroup prejudice. Several studies have also tried to simulate cooperative tasks in VR with virtual avatars designed to represent a salient outgroup. However, results have been mixed, and many of these context scenarios do not incorporate realistic dialogue or prolonged social engagement. Another important consideration to assess VR's applicability to intergroup contexts is player avatar identifiability. The social identity model of de-individualization, or the side theory, argues that when people are non-identifiable, they are more likely to behave in an unconstrained manner. Some research suggests that when users can be identified by their avatars in virtual or online spaces, they're more likely to show greater personal accountability for their public behavior. Now I'll pass the presentation to Gabriel.
Thanks for that introduction, Vivian. So in summary, our experiment, the objectives of our experiment were twofold. In a 2x2 between subjects design, we wanted to test firstly whether conversational-based intergroup contact with virtual avatars can reduce bias, and two, to test whether these changes in bias can be influenced by perceptions of how similar one's user is to their avatar. So a final sample of 180 participants above 18 years old were recruited from a research university in Singapore. Participants were tasked with role-playing as a service staff at a local restaurant. The customer they were tasked with serving, an NPC virtual avatar, was designed to be either a member of the in-group or an out-group, which in our context was consistently African-American. Through back and forth dialogue selections, we designed the interaction with the customer to be pleasant and positive all throughout. And to manipulate user avatar similarity, we took portrait photos of all participants who came into the lab prior to the VR experience. In the high similarity condition, participants' own avatars would be customized to their own face, while in the low similarity condition, we use an AI-generated stranger's face. So before and after the VR experience, we measured a series of cognitive and affective DVs of bias in a self-report questionnaire. So self-out-group overlap, feeling thermometer attitudes, social distance, and empathic feelings. So here's a general summary of our experiment workflow. So after the pretest questionnaire, we took photos of all participants across all conditions for consistency, but it was only in the high similarity condition where this photo would be customized to their avatar's face. Then they entered the VR environment and had a pleasant interaction with an NPC virtual partner who was either an in-group character or an African-American out-group character. Lastly, they completed a post-test questionnaire capturing the same DVs to see if they changed over time. So as you can see in this image, this is an example of how we kind of transplanted participants' own faces onto their virtual avatars. And the second image below shows how the NPC virtual partner looked like in the outgroup contact condition. So in summary, we had 3 major hypotheses. So firstly, in line with Gordon Allport's contact hypothesis, we predicted that contact with an outgroup partner should lead to more positive outgroup perceptions than contact with an in-group character. Secondly, in line with theories of de-individuation and anonymity, high user avatar similarity should likewise lead to improved outgroup perceptions, and that this effect should be positively mediated by a greater sense of personal identifiability. When it comes to the interaction between NPC virtual partner group as well as similarity, we posed a research question instead of a directional hypothesis. This is because of competing possibilities for how similarity might influence the outcomes of intergroup contact. From a side perspective, de-individuation would weaken the effects of intergroup contact, meaning that in the low similarity condition, there should be no differences in outgroup perceptions regardless of the virtual partner's group identity. On the other hand, research testing the interplay between anonymity and intergroup contact effects have been quite mixed. More anonymity, alternatively, could actually make in-group versus out-group divides less categorically salient, such that low similarity might actually reduce the barriers for intergroup contact to be implemented successfully. So we kept this question open-ended to test for these competing possibilities. In summary, we found significant main effects of our similarity manipulation on bias outcomes, but found no main effects of the partner group identity condition, nor interactive effects between similarity and partner group identity. So in line with side and accountability predictions, high similarity did indeed produce significant improvements in self-out group overlap. So meaning that in statistical terms, we found a significant within subjects interaction between time from pre-test to post-test and similarity. And these effects were retained and robust even after controlling for gender, age, and ethnicity. While we did not see a similar change over time for empathic feelings, it's important to note, though, that the high similarity condition led to greater post-test empathy than the low similarity condition. There was no significant time by similarity interaction, but when we collapsed across time and partner group condition, high similarity nonetheless led to greater empathic feelings toward the outgroup than low similarity. So this effect also was retained after controlling for demographic variables, but notably disappears when controlling for pre-test baseline empathy. Next, to test our mediation hypothesis, we ran separate mediation models for the DVs where we found effects for, namely self-outgroup overlap and empathic feelings. Contrary to our hypothesis, identifiability did not mediate the effect of user avatar similarity on self-outgroup overlap, with or without controlling for baseline measures and demographics. However, identifiability did positively mediate the effect of similarity on empathic feelings, controlling for gender, ethnicity, and age. High similarity led to increased identifiability relative to the low similarity condition. And in turn, this enhanced identifiability positively predicted empathic feelings toward the outgroup. So this finding does support our predictions. Identifiability may have succeeded in generating personal accountability, making salient self-important values of compassion, sympathy, and other important components of empathic feelings toward the outgroup. We note that, however, when controlling for baseline empathic feelings, the indirect effect no longer remains significant. As such, while these early results look promising, it's important to note that the manipulation did not necessarily lead to effects independent from the shared variance with baseline levels of empathy. So in an exploratory serial mediation model, we found an interesting result that brings together our separate findings for empathic feelings and self-outgroup overlap. Identifiability mediated the effect of similarity on empathic feelings toward the outgroup, which in turn was a strong positive predictor of self-outgroup overlap. So this model provides support for empathy as a primary mechanism underlying the effect of various strategies to reduce bias. But as with the single mediation model, the overall indirect effect was not significant after controlling for pre-test empathy and self-outgroup overlap, but remained robust even when controlling for demographic variables. So some final thoughts. This first pre-registered study offered some early promising findings. The strongest effects we found was for user avatar similarity on self-outgroup overlap, supporting our predictions. We saw a change in overlap scores from pre-test to post-test due to the high similarity manipulation. Though there is preliminary evidence for identifiability as a mechanism here, it seems that empathic feelings accounts for more of this variance overall. In the intergroup relations literature, empathy has likewise been identified as a prominent affective mechanism underlying various strategies to reduce bias. In our exploratory serial mediation model, empathy preceded self-outgroup overlap, supporting extensive research that underscores the primacy of affect in shaping social cognitions and attitudes. Identifiability by itself might be insufficient or too distal of a factor to account for differences in self-outgroup overlap due to our manipulation. Lastly, we surprisingly did not find any significant results for our intergroup contact manipulation. For our second pre-registered study, instead of manipulating the group identity of the NPC virtual partner, we aim to manipulate the quality of such contact experiences, given research that finds how interpersonal demeanor and contact quality to be stronger predictors for intergroup outcomes than contact quantity alone. With that said, thank you for listening to this brief introduction to our work so far. We appreciate any questions or feedback you might have, so please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.